Hey guys, welcome to module 4 of HTML CSS series. In this module, we'll be learning about how to style the borders in CSS, how we can use the margin or the elements, and how we can use the paddings. Okay, so let's begin. So first of all, the border property will allow you to specify the style, the width, and the color of the element. So there are multiple things that you can use. There is a border style, border width. We will start with the border style. Okay, so border style can be a dotted. You may want a dotted border, a dashed border, a solid border, a double border, an outside border, and much like that. So you can how you can write it. You have to write border style colon dotted. Okay, so I'll show you how. So this is a document, HTML document, and I have linked this document with this style sheet that is called one.css. I hope you are all familiar with how to link the style sheet. If you are not, I'll put the link because I have made a separate video how to link the style sheet for the HTML. Okay, and I also hope that you all are aware about the class and ID thing that I have told you in the previous sections. Okay, so suppose I define a paragraph with dot class. So I told you about dot class, that is a suppose I give it a different name. I'll give it a alpha name. So dot alpha is a class. Okay, and if I write a p before it, that means this class will be only applicable for the paragraphs. Okay, so suppose this thing I wrote border style. Okay, and I give it solid. Okay, I'll save this thing, and whenever I write a para of class equals to alpha, so I'll this is solid border slash p. Okay, I'll save this thing, I'll run this thing. See, so this has created a solid border among this text. Okay, so what I did, I created a class that is dot alpha, and I linked this class to this paragraph. Now this paragraph is following this style what we have done. Just to give you a brief introduction how this thing works. So you can choose multiple things in this way. Suppose I copy this thing and I change the class to suppose dotted, and the border style I change to dotted. Okay, I save this thing, I write different para with a class dotted. Okay, so this will be a dotted border slash p. I close this thing, I'll save this thing, and this will come because we have given a dotted border over this paragraph. Please forgive my spelling mistakes, I do it a lot. Okay, so this is the way how you can style the borders. Okay, now it can be styled on all the 4 borders. I mean, if you want that this border on the top should be solid and the bottom should be dotted, you can change it by your in your own ways. So suppose I give it one value, I can change this value to solid and dotted. Okay, I'll save this thing and let's see what happens. See, the top and the bottom are solid and left and right are dotted. So what we did here, we gave 2 values. The first value will be given for top and bottom, so that made it the solid, and the second value is for the left and right, so this became dotted. In that way you can style all the 4 borders. If you want to style separately, you can also style border style, border bottom style. Okay, you wrote solid. Now in the same one you write border top style as suppose dotted or maybe double. Save this thing, run this thing, see how it comes. So the bottom border is solid, top is double. Since we haven't defined any left and right border, it is blank here. Okay, so this is the way you can use the border style feature. Now the next thing is the width of the border. So you can define the width in terms of pixels, in terms of the percentages, in terms of values like thin, medium or thick. So you can simply write it here. Suppose I make a simple statement. I write border style for only. Border style, suppose solid. Okay, and in this one I define the width, border width. I define 2 pixels, suppose. Okay, I'll save this thing. So you can see the width of the border will be of 2 pixels. If I change it to 5 pixels, save this, this will increase the width of the border. So this is how you can change the pixels. At the same time, if you want to specify the width for all the 4 borders separately, you can write for 1 values or 2 values, suppose. So the top and bottom will give this and take this value, left and right will take this value. We'll save this thing and reload this page. See, top and bottom will take 5 pixels, what we have defined in the first memory, and 10 pixels is taken by left and the right border. Okay, if you define 3 values, suppose 5, 10, 15 pixels, see what happens. So top has taken 5 pixels, as you see, bottom has taken 15 pixels, as you see here, it is much more, and the left and right have taken 10 pixels. So if you define 3 values, this is top, last one is bottom, and the middle one is left and right. Okay, if you give 4 values here, 20 pixels, now see what happens. So what happened here is, this is top has taken 5 pixels, right has taken 10 pixels, bottom has taken 15 pixels, and bottom, top, right, bottom, left has taken 20 pixels. This is what happened here. Okay, so in that way, in all the border properties, you can either give a single value or 4 values based on which border you want to style. Okay, so this is all about the border width. Now the next thing is the border color. So as it states simply, you can define the border color also. Border color, suppose I give it red. Okay, now generally by default the border will take the color of the content inside it. If the text color is red or black, the border will be black. If the text color is red, the border will be red by default. But if not, you can simply specify a color of your own choice. Okay, you can also use a border shorthand property. That means rather than writing in a big language border style, border width, border color, you can write in a shorthand language which follows the sequence border width, border style and border color. How? I'll show you. So you have to write only border colon, first of all border width, suppose 2 pixels, then the border style, that is solid, suppose I give it, or maybe dotted this time. Okay, and the finally what you want to give is the border color. So suppose I this time give it blue. Okay, I'll save this thing. This will come. So dotted border of 2 pixels in a color of blue. So this is a border shorthand property that can be used to save some space so that the code does not look so messy. The next thing that comes is the CSS margin. The CSS margin is used to create the space around the elements outside of any defined border. So the basic difference between the margin and the padding is the margin creates the spaces outside the border and the padding creates the space inside the border. I'll show you how that works. Okay, so suppose I have to define a margin here. I gave it a margin of suppose 20 pixels. So which margin it will be? It will be all the 4 margins because we have defined only one value. So it will take 20 pixels from top, left, bottom, right. Okay. If I define only one margin, that is margin left, I'll save this thing. So what it will do? It will take the margin only from left, not from top, not from bottom. Okay. In the same way, you can also define margin in 4 separate values, that is 20 pixels, maybe 10 pixels, maybe 5 pixels and 50 pixels. So what are those values? This is top, right, bottom and left. Top margin is 20, right is 10, bottom is 5, and left is 50 pixels. So it will come like this. Okay, 50 pixels on the left, whatever value you will define here. So suppose for now I'll go with 10 pixels. Okay, I'll save this thing. So this is the way you can use a margin property. Now it can be in pixels, in points, in centimeters, etc. It can be in percentages also. There are also eligibility of the negative values. Now there is one thing I want to make clear. There is a thing called margin collapse. I'll tell you how this margin collapse works. Suppose margin collapse, I gave the margin bottom for the top for this one as suppose 80 pixels. Okay, and for this one I gave margin top as 30 pixels. I'll just explain you what I'm doing here. I'll save this thing, I'll run this thing. Okay, so what I have done, I have given a bottom margin of this border as 80 pixels and the top margin for this border as 30 pixels. So it should always create a space of, ideally it should be 80 plus 30, it should be 110, but this does not happen. What the coding will do, it will create the margin, which is the larger among these two values. Okay, so if the margin bottom is 80 pixels, margin top is 30 pixels, the margin between these two elements will be the biggest value between those values. Okay, so it will be having a margin of 80 pixels between these two values. So that thing you should keep in mind, so that next time you make a program, you should not be surprised with what comes. Okay, so this is a thing called margin collapse. Margin is collapsed to the bigger value. Now the next and the last thing is the CSS padding. CSS padding, as I told you, is used to generate the space inside the body. Now how this padding can be used? Suppose I give it padding of 5 pixels. Okay, I'll save this thing and see how it comes. So it has created a space of 5 pixels on all the sides from this content to this border. This is the space I'm talking about. Okay, so this is how the padding works. Suppose I gave a padding for this element as 50 pixels. It is very big value, but I'm just showing you for the sake so that it is clearly visible to you. So it has created a space of 50 pixels between this content and the border. Okay, so this is how you can use CSS paddings. Now there is one thing I want to tell you. I'll just do it first of all, and this I'll tell you. Suppose for now I'll delete this margin thing from both the things, and I'll give a width to it. Width is suppose 300 pixels. Okay, and also I'll define the width for this element also, 100 pixels. Okay, and I'll give a background color to it, as suppose yellow. Okay, so these two things are having the same width. Okay, I'll save this and I'll run this. I'll just show you what is happening here. So since those two properties, those two classes have same width, but the class alpha is in the top, is giving a little extra space, is taking a little extra space than the class dotted. Why it is happening? Because when we added a padding of 5 pixels, it took space of 10 pixels from left and right, and it has added it additionally over here. Okay, so that is the drawback of using a padding when you do not want the width to be changed. Okay, you wanted the width to be 300 pixels, but the width is now 310 pixels because additionally you have added 5 pixels on left and right. So you can change this thing. you can write box sizing, and you can write it to border box. Okay, you save this thing. Now what comes? See, now the width is same. So whatever padding you will be adding, it will take inside this border only. It will increase the space inside in the vertical direction only, not the horizontal direction. So the width will remain constant, and still you can add more padding. Suppose if you add the padding of 50 pixels here, it won't go on the right, it will come on the top only. So the width will be constant here. Okay, so this is all about CSS margin, paddings, and the borders. If you have any doubt, you can just let me know, and I'll be happy to help you.